Hello everyone, this is RaySpace, and welcome to some ship design discussion with Nertea's Far Future mod in Kerbal Space Program 1.12 with Realism Overhaul. As you can see, I have a very unique, very large ship here that is meant to go very fast. Well, it's meant to go very fast, but it takes a long time to do it. It's not as bad as ion engines, but you can see that the burn time is 24 days, and it's not lying about that. However, in that 24 days, it can get 1.15 million meters per second of delta V, or 1,152 kilometers per second. So that can get us to various places rather fast if we can get there in 24 days. If it's a shorter time, we can't use all that delta V. Which is why at the back of this, we have a very unique engine configuration. We need a lot of engines, so I have them arrayed like this. They're not arrayed on these because that would put stress on the crew tubes that are between the center pod and the outer pods. Why do we have outer pods? Well, when you have all of these engines like this, and these are direct antimatter-initiated microfusion engines, they get 115,000 seconds of ISP, but only 45 kilonewtons of thrust. So basically, when you have an array of 18 of them like this, you're still not getting as much thrust as a Merlin vacuum. So that's our problem here. Great efficiency, of course, 115,000, what you would expect from antimatter-initiated microfusion, but really bad thrust. And so, given that, we need a lot of radiators, because when we have a lot of engines, a lot of fusion engines, we need a lot of radiators. And if you need a lot of radiators, either you can scale them up or you need a large count, a very large count. It's better to scale them up. So why haven't I scaled them up? Because scaling them up doesn't seem to work at all. So this is a gripe. We have the tweak scale on here. It's apparently built in. But when I scale it up, it doesn't actually do anything as far as the heat removed. And you can see the system flux. This radiator panel is, or set of panels, is removing 600 kilowatts. That's what it says. But it removes 600 kilowatts regardless of its scale. I have tried to fix this and I cannot. So, I don't know. Obviously, the legit size to set them at is 100% then. I put them to 200% just for looks, really. We need the tanks, of course. So we might as well make the radiators a bit bigger. But not too big, because that diminishes our efficiency. Scaling the radiators up when they don't give any benefit means we're carrying extra dry mass, right? So that's why I had to create this a triple body, triple keel, as I ended up calling it, ship, just to carry the radiators. We are using the horizontal format for some of it, but I'm not putting 6 of them or something like that, because then it'll get cramped and they can't rotate. So that's why it's the way it is. Yeah. So I tested this out during a live stream, and I got it over to Venus and then to Mercury in 44 days. That's not particularly fast and not really what I want. What is this all about? I guess we should talk about that. What's the goal here? Why am I doing this? Well, in a previous video I introduced my TIPA timeline, which is a future history discussing what happens from basically now until 2100 in space developments. And it's not focusing on all space developments, it's focusing on the space developments by a certain set of countries, so I could focus in on those. But there comes a question. I mean, that's the backbone story of all this. And then the question is, what can we make of that? And one idea I had was sort of an around the world in 80 days thing, but around the solar system. So how soon in history, in future history, will we be able to travel around the solar system within 80 days? Or within 1 year? 1 year would be sooner than 80 days. That's the question. That's what technology would be required for that, given actual physical technology. Like, we don't have antimatter-initiated microfusion engines, but physically speaking, in theory, they are things that can happen and we can calculate some of the properties of. So that is what we've got there. And the fuel we're carrying is liquid helium-3 and liquid deuterium. And my assumption would be that at certain locations, especially the outer planets, these will be refueled at those places in a sufficiently advanced time. You know, I don't know how long that'll be, but at some point we will be able to refuel this when it goes out there. Now, it's not great that we have these radiators that are small, though. So that's a little bit sad. But let's take this outside and I'll talk a little bit more about the struggles with using it. So I'm just going to cheat this into orbit, of course. It could be launchable. In fact, with my Monument launcher, I could launch it in one go. But for now, some electrical thing. That's dynamic battery storage has an issue. I don't think that would be related to the issue with the radiators, but who knows. So we're going to go to an inclination of 28, which is the natural one out of Cape Canaveral, and we're just going to be in line with the moon, by the way. When you cheat it into orbit, you just need a longitude of ascending node of 0 for that. And so a circular orbit that's high up. We want it to be high up because Pekka's warp thrust mod, which is what I've added to these engines to allow me to have thrust during time warp, and we'll need that because of the 28-day burn time, does not let you have that thrust during time warp if you're suborbital. And actually, if we were really low around the Earth, we would probably end up, because we have so little thrust, deorbiting ourselves and plunging into the atmosphere. So we don't want to do that. Now, what we want to do is go to other planets, of course. I had previously sent this over to Venus and then Mercury, and I want to try that one more time, maybe trying to get there faster this time. Now, these engines have a spool up thing. They have a charging, so I'm gonna let it charge. Okay, now they're fully charged, so I can activate them. And we are going to point at target. I throttle up. They're pulsed for some reason. And I'm using them to turn. Of course, with more powerful engines, or with a warp drive, so the Daedalus engine, or Bussard Ramjet, or warp drive, those can get around the solar system real quick and everything. The idea is to figure out what is the least complicated thing that you could use in order to make the dream of basically an off-year trip around the solar system happen, right? And we would assume that these ships are already going from place to place carrying cargo or whatever, and our intrepid main character, and I intend to write this, so don't steal the idea. You've been warned. But the main character is going to maybe hitch on to some of these cargo vessels, or maybe there will be some passenger vessels that could be arranged, and they'll be different depending on what particular leg of the journey that they're handling, because as we'll see, it's not always optimal to have, you know, a long burn time. And especially when it comes to Venus and Mercury, because their orbits are so fast, having a long burn time is not a great thing. Let's say Earth to Venus. Now, we don't care about the windows. We're just assuming we're going now. And we're assuming that we're going to go in less than 24 days, in fact. How much would that take? As you can see, it only takes a total, that is to go there and to capture, of 199,000 meters per second to get there in 24 days. So, let's say 14. Because we want to go to Venus and Mercury. Again, we can assume that there's going to be some refueling at some locations, but 353 is still much less than the delta V we're carrying in 14 days. So can we do it in 7? Yes, in theory. The problem is we have to speed up and slow down in time. And that has proven very difficult. Okay, I've got a node burn time indicator here on MechJeb, and it says 12 days. So it takes 12 days to do the 360,000, but the travel time is 7 days. Well, obviously we won't be able to do the 360,000, right? So therein lies the rub. That's why we have all the engines that we have, and we probably need more. But for a vessel that's going to the outer planets, we don't need so many engines because we have enough time to do the long burns. Though maybe not that much time. I mean, after all, we're aiming for 80 days ultimately, maybe a year. I don't know. Well, whichever one. I mean, we'll do a year first and then the 80 days, but we're still going to try to get there quickly. It's just a little bit more than our Delta V. I say that, but we're talking about 300,000 more. But as you can see, it's quite doable if we have a little bit more than what we've got right now to get there in 24 days. So if you can get to Saturn in 24 days, can you sort of finagle it so that we can get to all the outer planets quickly? It depends on where the planets are, right? That's another thing. It's one thing if they're all, I mean, they're never all on the same, well, except for Voyager or something. But here right now, we could probably go pretty quickly between Uranus and Neptune, right? But if Uranus and Neptune were on opposite sides of the system, it'd be much, much harder. So it does depend on where exactly they are. We're not waiting for a window, we're just going for them. You know, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are really in line right there, so that'd be a good deal for those. It's probably not too bad to go Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune right now. This is the year 2000, by the way. Well, not at a time when we actually be doing this. But it's taken basically all this time to turn. Okay, now we're going to have to put it in the hands of Pekka's warp thrust. But I don't want to do it while we're retrograde. So I'm actually going to shut the engines down and wait until the target is more prograde, but it wobbles away from the target. So we're going to wait till we're over here because we don't want to bring our orbit down. Even if we are just temporarily crashing into Earth, it'll stop us from being able to use the thrust during time warp. And another peril that we have to avoid is the sun, which we can very easily end up being suborbital with. Especially if we want to... One of the problems that I discovered was, let's say I'm trying to go to Mars. Well, prograde around the sun is this way around, right? So if you wanted to go a straight line to Mars right now, you actually have to go retrograde around the sun, which means that at some point you are actually going to be deorbiting around the sun. You know, you're going to be smacking into the sun, and then you can't use the thrust during time warp at that point. So if the planets are on this side of the sun and you're on that side, you have to wait. You're going to have to wait until Earth is over on this side so that you can get to them. Otherwise, you're going to make your orbit retrograde, and that's bad for many reasons, but mainly for the time warp issue. Okay, so we are in time warp, and in time warp we are applying thrust. We can see the Delta V going down, but you can see it's not going down very fast because we're a very huge vessel being pushed by the equivalent of a Merlin vacuum. So yeah, it's taking a while, and let's see what happens. We're not smacking into Venus very obviously. Some of this is... yeah, tilt our orbit up hopefully. Okay, we're on escape. I have, you see another vessel that I tried to get there with. It had a problem where at a certain point it stopped actually doing time warp during, it stopped doing the thrust during time warp. So I'm wondering if this vessel will have a similar problem. That I don't know the cause of. Now we'll obviously have to do, we can't really just point at Venus. We really do have to do some radial. So, alright. I relent. We need to plot this properly. And we need to use big numbers. Fortunately, this little maneuver node thing here has this scale, and that is very effective. You still want to go faster. Our orbital velocity is 136 though, so we have to watch out for how we're going to slow down. The node is in 1 day, 8 hours. Right now, this amount will take 2 days. And right now we're gaining over there in 12 days. So there we have an encounter. This is still realism overhaul, so the reaction wheels are nerfed, which is why I'm relying on the thrust to turn us. RCS ports also aren't super great, so I mean, if the engine gimbling turns us like this, we know that the RCS ports aren't going to do the most wonderful thing either. The diameter of the large tanks is pretty hefty. It's like 18 meters, so I think what we'll do is we'll probably have smaller ones of those and larger ones of the deuterium tanks, so that it's more easily launchable. Though I like this look in general. Having the same size tanks is boring, after all. So, I mean, if we were using the monument launcher, it wouldn't be that big a deal. We didn't put crew on it this time, but the crew facilities are basically resized ISS modules. That's why it's large instead of just a normal station lab there. Larger than the normal ISS modules, and then crew tubes in between. With the quick transfers that we're doing, the anticipation is that we don't need artificial gravity. Now, the thrust from the engines, which ideally would be constant, would provide some sort of artificial gravity, but only a tiny bit. We're talking about right now, our thrust weight ratio isn't reading 1% right now of Earth's gravity, so yeah. Not really that much gravity. So, but as far as a transfer for a few days is concerned, that's not a big deal. We're not even talking about an ISS stay altogether when it comes to, even the longer trips. Okay, I think it's pointing at... We can't hold maneuver. If I try to start time warp holding maneuver, it'll actually deviate from it, so it has to be stability assist. Still off, I mean, because we're plotting an instantaneous maneuver. And now this is looking very dangerous, though. We better stop it. Oh, I think it stopped it already. Uh-oh. Can we... Oh, yeah. It's got this problem. For some reason, it's deciding to not let me do... on previous occasions... Oh, there's some scrolling going on there. Oh, is it reading some other input, maybe? Something is scrolling that, isn't it? Well, anyway, there is a mystery here. I don't know what's going on, but it is stopping me from getting thrust during time warp at this point for some reason. And it's not because we're smacking into the sun, and it's not for any other reason I know, but it happened during the live stream as well. Even though previously, during the live stream, I had gotten closer to the sun and stuff like that. So, I don't know why. But, in principle, we know we're going 270,000, and if this all worked out, that's in 3 days, that maneuver. And so, let's just say I just outright... Oops. Got rid of the 270,000. Okay, so that would really crash us into the sun, but it is an extreme situation. That's 7 days it would take to do that. Right now it's a 5-day, 4-hour burn time. And we would arrive there in 8 days, 11 hours. So that's about half the gap between this node starting and when we get there. Half the time. But we weren't burning the whole time, so this wasn't ideal. The ideal thing is we are burning for the entire trip. Half of the trip going faster towards it, and the other half of the trip slowing down. then that would be optimal. But you'll notice that on this trip to Venus, with these engines as they are right now, there's no way for us to actually use all of our delta V. So we can't go as fast as we possibly can, and that would require, in order to do that, we would need more engines. But if we have more engines, we need more radiators. But I really hope somebody can tell me how to fix the tweak scale problem on the radiators so that I can get radiators of the right size. So we have this thing, but I don't think it's going to let me use the engines during time warp, and there's no way I'm going to do a 5-day burn otherwise. But in theory we could do this. We certainly have the delta V, it was always a matter of the time. I do wonder if something is interfering with it, and that's why it's scrolling like this. Did a Windows update mess around with my controllers? Possibly. But this is the Antimatter-Initiated Microfusion engine ship right now. I don't have a formal name for it. It would be in the timeline at around 2120, something like that. But as we are right now, even as plotted, we're not getting there in 7 days or 14 days. We're 11 days in right now, and we're arriving in 5 more days. So we're actually taking 17 altogether, and probably will take longer than that. So yeah. Whatever Transfer Window Planner says, or whatever the plot says, it's all wrong. It's because it's not really thinking about the situation that we've got. And so much like with the ion engines, when you use these kinds of engines, you have to think differently about the whole thing. And none of our tools are really optimized for dealing with these. Okay, so Venus might be troublesome. Can we get out to Pluto? Well, certainly like this, a year's not a problem. How about the 80 days? 80 days would be a problem for this. So we can't do any sort of Earth direct to Pluto leg. But then again, we wouldn't be doing that anyway, because we'd be doing all sorts of other planets in between. And hopefully Pluto wouldn't be too far away from some of the others. We would have to figure out which order would be best distance minimizing. But alright, 120 days? Certainly we can do 120 days. We can do it faster. Maybe 100 days? Maybe. So maybe 100 days. Let me just... Well, we don't need an alarm, but... yeah, I was tempted to ask MechJeb to plot it, but I don't think I'm going to. Actually, you know what? I just thought of something that might fix our problem. At one point during the live stream, Meg1B suggested, because we were having a antimatter boil-off problem, that I needed some additional power units, and so I had added a molten salt reactor and thermal power generator from KSP Interstellar. But maybe it'd be better to remove the KSP Interstellar portions of this to solve the problem. Maybe they're the cause of not being able to do the time warp. But why in the middle? Why in the middle of our trip would it cause a problem when it's okay earlier? I don't know. But it's the main difference between this ship and the one that was able to continue without being impeded. So, since that's the difference, let's have those off and see if that helps. But we should probably have some other power unit. But I don't know. We'll just let the antimatter boil off if that's the issue. Now we do have a fusion reactor that comes with far future. Maybe that's okay then. Hopefully we can tweak scale that down. Okay. The problem with the fusion reactors is they take way more radiator. Can we make them really small? They might not actually scale. Let's see. System flux 6 megawatts. System flux, yeah. No matter what size I make it, it's going to have a system flux of 6 megawatts. and our total system is 80 megawatts. So we would have to put way more radiators, again, because they don't scale with tweak scale. That's why I was using the KSP Interstellar one. But I think our antimatter units will be okay for the trip without any additional power generation. Let's see. So let's see if that solves the problem. Then I don't have to worry Pekka about that. Well, getting there within 2 weeks would be great. But yeah, figuring out when to do this stuff is difficult. Even if I do have the node burn time down here, and the distance to the node, everything is changing because the node is based on an instantaneous sudden turn. We're actually going to end up on a curve here. That was one thing that KSP2 was trying to do, right, but didn't quite get around to doing perfectly. And of course, Principia would be able to do, but we can't really use these engines and do thrustering time warp with Principia as far as I know. Okay, we're mostly lined up here. Let's see if it works. Oh no, it stopped it. Okay, it was not the KSP interstellar reactors after all. Nope, something else is going on. Something else weird. I'm leaning towards something that a Windows update did has messed up something. I don't know, because there has been a Windows update. Before it seemed to work just fine, but now it does not. Okay, well, so this has been part of my frustration with trying this stuff out. Yeah. But here is one ship. There it is. That is an Antimatter-Initiated Microfusion vessel, and its format is partly due to the fact that we need so many of these fuel modules, but also because of the radiator problem I've been having. And part of the reason I'm making the video is to ask for help on that. Maybe we can solve this and I don't have to necessarily have it look like this with like 100 radiators on it. It might still have 3 bodies, but maybe we'll have the radiators be a little bit more sensible. But anyway, for now, with that, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do press like. If you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time.